How manipulators test your empathy to control your reality. The most dangerous manipulators don't attack your weakness. They exploit your strength. They don't need to break you. They convince you that saving them will heal you. And by the time you realize it's a trap, you've already built the cage yourself, out of compassion, patience, and guilt. Because the greatest control doesn't come from fear or dominance. It comes from obligation. Manipulators have a method, a quiet, precise process. They begin by testing your empathy. They'll share a sob story early on, sometimes about a cruel ex, a toxic childhood, or endless bad luck. Watch closely. It's not vulnerability, it's bait. They study your reaction. Do your eyes soften? Do you comfort them? Do you promise to be different? If you pass that test, they've found their opening, because empathy gives them access. And once they know your need to help, fix, or understand, they'll create scenarios that force you to prove that empathy again and again. You'll forgive them quicker. You'll explain away their cruelty as trauma. You'll take responsibility for their emotions. And soon, they don't even have to manipulate you. You'll do it to yourself. Take Emily, a 29-year-old nurse. She met a man who claimed he'd been betrayed by everyone. At first, he was sweet, gentle, broken, a man who just needed someone to believe in him. He called her his angel. He cried in her arms. He told her she was saving him. Then the shift came. The first argument, she tried to leave. He sobbed, shaking, saying, "Please, don't give up on me like everyone else." And her empathy, the very thing that made her beautiful, became his weapon. Because guilt is the leash that never breaks. Over time, she stopped expressing her own pain. He was always the victim, and she became the caretaker, not of a man, but of a story carefully designed to keep her trapped. Empathy triggers the release of oxytocin, the bonding chemical. It reduces fear, increases trust, and makes you more forgiving. Manipulators understand this intuitively, even if they can't explain it biologically. So they alternate between distress and affection, keeping your brain hooked on reward-punishment cycles. You feel responsible for their emotional state. When they're happy, you feel relief. When they're sad, you feel guilt. And just like that, your emotional compass no longer points toward truth. It points toward them. They've hacked your empathy, not by taking your kindness, but by teaching you to weaponize it against yourself. Every manipulator has one goal: to make you believe that your value is measured by how much pain you can absorb. They blur the line between compassion and compliance, between helping and being controlled. But empathy isn't supposed to enslave you. It's meant to connect you. And when someone uses it as a chain, you're not healing them. You're feeding the monster they built to protect their own ego. The first step toward freedom isn't becoming less kind. It's becoming less guilty for saying no, because true empathy without boundaries is self-destruction disguised as love. They don't raise their voice. They don't need to. The most dangerous manipulators can control you with a sigh, with silence, with a single disappointed look that says, "I thought you were better than this." They don't dominate your body. They occupy your conscience. And that's how empathy becomes obedience. Because once they learn what triggers your guilt, they can make you do almost anything without ever asking directly. Step 1. The guilt anchor. Every manipulator begins by finding your emotional weak point, not your flaw, but your value, your compassion, your desire to help, your need to be fair. They'll subtly test how quickly you take responsibility for other people's pain. If you say, "I'm sorry," too easily, they know they found your lever. They'll plant guilt like a seed, a look of disappointment, a heavy silence after a question. They let you fill the silence, apologizing, explaining, fixing. That's how they train you. Each time you cave to guilt, you reinforce the loop. Your brain starts to equate their approval with your moral worth. And once you believe that, they no longer need to control you. You'll self-regulate to maintain peace, to be good, to not hurt their feelings. They've turned your empathy into an internal prison guard. Step 2, the pity trap. Manipulators often play the victim because it disarms your logic. When someone looks broken, you lower your guard. You stop analyzing and you start nurturing. They use this moment to shift accountability. I didn't mean to yell. I've just been under so much stress. You know how my childhood was. I can't help it sometimes. I guess I'm just not as strong as you. Each phrase triggers empathy and delays consequences. You find yourself comforting them after they hurt you. You reassure them when they were the ones who lied. And before long, you're walking on emotional eggshells. Not because you fear punishment, but because you fear their pain. It's genius, dark, predatory genius, because you'll work harder to protect their comfort than your own safety. Corporate environments are breeding grounds for this manipulation. Meet Thomas, a team leader at a marketing firm. His strategy? Emotional, guilt-based leadership. Whenever employees voiced concerns, he sighed and said, "I just care too much, you know. I stay up nights worrying about you all." When a mistake happened, he didn't yell. He looked heartbroken. He said things like, "I guess I just expected more loyalty." Soon, his team stopped confronting him. They worked unpaid hours. They apologized for problems they didn't cause. Thomas didn't need threats. He had empathy leverage, a weaponized sense of shared guilt. It wasn't respect that kept his team quiet. It was emotional conditioning. They'd internalized his narrative. If you disappoint me, you're a bad person. Step 3. The gaslight of kindness. Here's the darkest trick of all. Manipulators often use kindness itself as camouflage. They'll say, "I just want what's best for you. You're too sensitive. I'd never hurt you." This is benevolent gaslighting, making you question your pain through reassuring language. It's how abusers hide in plain sight, how cult leaders justify control, how narcissists twist affection into ownership. When you confront them, they act hurt, not angry. "Wow, after everything I've done for you?" That's the empathy snare, because now you're the one who feels cruel, cold, ungrateful, and suddenly you're apologizing again for the pain they caused. Every manipulative relationship operates on an invisible contract. You owe me your empathy. You never signed it. You just kept showing up, helping, understanding, and they kept cashing emotional checks you didn't know you'd written. This is how your reality shifts. You stop asking, "Is this right for me?" and start asking, "Will this make them happy?" By then, your moral compass has been hijacked. Empathy without boundaries has become enslavement. But the truth is, empathy was never the enemy. The real danger is guilt that masquerades as compassion. And if empathy can be hijacked, then it can also be reclaimed. That's where we go next. After every manipulator leaves, there's a silence that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels like withdrawal. You question yourself. Was I too harsh? Did I overreact? What if they really needed me? That's the final residue of manipulation. A confusion so deep that your empathy still fights for your captor. But this is where you begin to wake up. The first step, recognition without blame. The first step in breaking the spell isn't anger. It's clarity. You can't fight what you don't understand. And manipulators thrive on emotional fog, the blur between guilt and care. You must see manipulation as a system, not a single act. It's not about bad people versus good victims. It's about psychological equations, patterns that repeat until they're recognized. The equation looks like this. Your empathy multiplied by their insecurity equals your control. You didn't lose your power. It was redirected, used against you like emotional judo. But once you see the pattern, it begins to collapse. Because awareness breaks hypnosis. Remember this line. Empathy without boundaries becomes self-erasure. You are not heartless for setting limits. You are awake. The second step, rebuilding your emotional firewall. Every manipulator survives on emotional access. They need your reactions, guilt, pity, apology as oxygen. The defense? Emotional neutrality. Not coldness, neutrality. When you stop reacting with guilt or over-explaining, the power dynamic collapses. You starve the illusion. This is called the gray rock technique in psychology. You become uninteresting. Calm, factual, emotionally non-reactive. They will test it. They'll provoke you, accuse you of being cruel, distant, selfish. But every time you remain neutral, you take a piece of your reality back. The moment you stop explaining yourself is the moment they lose the ability to rewrite your story. The third step, reclaiming your moral authority. There's a simple but terrifying exercise, one most survivors of manipulation avoid at first. Stand before a mirror, look at your reflection, and say aloud, "I am not responsible for other people's happiness." The first time it feels wrong, almost cruel, because your empathy has been programmed to equate helping with worth. But the more you say it, the more your nervous system recalibrates. It starts to separate compassion from self-sacrifice. This is how you rebuild your moral authority. By reclaiming the right to choose when and how you give. Empathy is a gift, not a currency. The fourth step, the reverse test. Here's a powerful test used in forensic psychology. When someone tries to guilt or emotionally twist you, ask yourself, would this person do the same for me? If the answer is no, you've found manipulation. Try this with friends, coworkers, partners, even family. You'll quickly see who's been trading in emotional debt. They'll act offended when you stop overgiving. That's expected, because every manipulator is addicted to control. But once you stop paying the emotional toll, their power disintegrates. You're not breaking a relationship, you're breaking a spell. When you finally step away, the world looks different. Colors sharper, silence softer. The guilt still whispers, but now you know it's just an echo. Because real empathy isn't submission, it's understanding without surrender. You can feel deeply without being controlled. You can love without losing your logic. You can care without being consumed. Every manipulator you outgrow is proof that your heart survived its own captivity. So when someone says, "You've changed," you can smile and reply, "Yes, I finally stopped confusing control with care." In the end, empathy doesn't make you weak. It makes you dangerous. Because once you understand how it's weaponized, no one can ever use it against you again. You survived their test. The test that was never about love, but about control. Every guilt trip, every apology that came too fast, every "you're too sensitive." It wasn't random. It was data, a study of your empathy used to rewrite your emotions. But you didn't break. You learned. Now you understand the equation. Your empathy was the key, but you hold the lock. If this video opened your eyes, don't just scroll. Share it so someone else trapped in that emotional web can see the pattern too. Comment your story, because your silence feeds their power. And your voice, that's how the manipulation ends. But what if I told you that manipulation doesn't stop when they lose control of your emotions? It evolves, that even after they're gone, they can still live inside your mind, through your fears, your habits, your choices. That's what's coming next. Subscribe for more.